It is said that over the past 2,500 years, on the circumference of the Cromleck of Rennes-les-Bains, different spoils of war, documents, and relics of religious value, including urns and ossuaries, have been deposited. Whatever the case, these remains belong to some important individuals. Here have been deposited over the past 2,500 years cursed artifacts that hide the darkest secrets of history. The legend begins with a Jewish elite who is supposed to have brought here the remains of the Solimitan temple, which they buried at Subiru under the Pier de Pan, the location of which corresponds to the ear of corn in the Virgo constellation. Afterwards came the Tecto-sages, who after the pillaging of the Temple of Delphi deposited part of their spoils here, the part that really mattered. They deposited this treasure under Rocco Negro, corresponding to the sign of Pisces. Over 100 years later, the story grows more complicated, bringing on stage the character named Quintus Servilius Sapio, who became proconsul of Cisalpine Gaul. As a result of some investigations he had undertaken, he convinced the Roman Senate that in Tolosa there was a treasure that amounted to 50,000 gold ingots of 6 kilograms each, and another 10,000 silver ingots of the same weight. Servilius Sapio was commissioned by the Senate to lead a march to Tolosa, which he proceeded to loot, taking on that occasion the semi-legendary Aurum Tulusanum. This gold was in fact that part of the cursed gold from Delphi, which the Tecto-sages considered important just because of its exchange value. The gold and silver wealth of Tolosa was sent to Rome, but only the silver arrived. The gold was robbed by a band of thieves thought to have been hired by Sapio himself. Officially, the gold from Tolosa has never been found. A legend, however, says the gold came into the hands of the Servili Sapioni family, being passed on to its last heir, Marcus Junius Brutus. There is another version of this story, stranger, but plausible in certain aspects. This says that the Gallic gold that came from the Temple of Delphi would have entered the Roman treasury in the end under the form of a black budget, with the purpose of covering certain strategic costs, meaning that type of spending that was unworthy of the virtues of which the Romans boasted. Well, this option will of course absolve Sapio of the suspicion of involvement in treason or involvement in the robbery, simply turning him into a major actor in an operation that eventually brought considerable benefit to the state. But things go further, and it seems that during the period of transition between Republic to Empire, Rome would have used this black budget to finance important projects of supporting the Herodian dynasty installed in Judea that had become a client state of Rome at the end of the Hasmonean dynasty. Probably the most important project of Herod the Great consisted in the expansion works of the Second Temple on Mount Moriah. There was another big project that Rome would have been directly interested in. The Jews were a strange people with a strange belief. They believed in one God, and this fitted extremely well with the interests of Rome. However, this bizarre belief would be better suited if it underwent a few minor changes, reforms that would make possible the remodeling of the one God in such a way that it would make him mortal and proof of his death to exist, to officially ascend to the sky, and unofficially to leave descendants on this earth. In this manner, controlled by Rome, faith in this God would be able to provide the emperors, which within a few generations would become Pontifex Maximus, with a truly sustainable legitimacy. In the year 70, the Romans plundered Jerusalem, destroying the second temple built by Herod the Great. The loot was taken to Rome. Can we talk here about a recovery of the investment? But Rome, in turn, would be robbed by the Visigoths in August 410. The great relics of the Second Temple in Jerusalem came into Alaric's hand, eventually ending up at the bottom of a lake. Some say it is the lake of the devil, or Lac de Diable, on the mountain of Sularac. Others that it is actually Lac Baranc, a lake 2.5 kilometres east of La Croix de Circle, under the sign of Gemini. Meanwhile, Jesus of Nazareth's divinity was established, and those who were dissatisfied with the result of the Nicene vote regrouped and appealed to the Stirpe to access some emergency funds for a new project. This time, the support was limited, so this new production that was to take place somewhere in the Arabian Peninsula would have to be low budget. That's all that could be managed. Between 711 and 715 AD, during the Muslim invasion of the Languedoc, a group of Arabs installed the tomb of the great Roman on the western cliffs of Valcrux, corresponding to Capricorn and Aquarius. Later, someone decided that this necropolis had to be repositioned. Thus, parts of it, different ossuaries, were scattered all across the forests around the old Roman castrum on the banks of the Sals River. There is a tradition claiming that a lead sarcophagus would exist inside a deposit on the northern axis of the Rennes-les-Bains village in the House of Aries. How ironic. At the western end of their empire, the Umayyads placed their poisoned gift for the Christians, a real time bomb that could blow everything up. It could have blown up the whole story of this Christ born of a virgin who had risen up to heaven after the crucifixion. In the 8th century, the task of guarding the treasure was given over to the Counts of Redi as descendants of the Visigothic royalty through the female line, and of the Merovingian royalty through the male. Leaving the Pyrenees for Brittany, these seigneurs handed over custody of the treasure to the Niort and Blanchefort families. That is until 1147, when monitoring passed to an alliance formed by the Cathars with the Templars of Bazou. 20 years after the Crusaders conquered Jerusalem, in the southern part of the Temple Plateau, in the area named Solomon's Stables, a group of the knights who would later build the Order of the Temple dug and eventually descended into a very deep shaft. It seems they brought out into the light of day something extremely important, and the power that the Templars acquired is largely due to the value of the artifacts recovered by them during these diggings. The artifacts were transported over the Mediterranean in 12 chests, to which was added a 13th brought from Aleppo. The transport arrived in the Pyrenees, and in the summer of 1134, it was stored in the foundations of the northwestern corner of the Albadun castle under the sign of Libra. Then at Gisors, the fracture of 1181 intervenes, which separates the Order of the Temple from its matrix, Notre Dame de Mont Sion. The year 1244 comes, when during a transaction between the Cathars in Montsegur and Blanche de Castile arises the tradition of the White Queen, the Dame Blanche, and her bath. Blanche de Castile was fully aware of the treasure's existence, but she did not gain control of it. Philip le Hardi died before he could pay off Philip le Bel, and the abolition of the Templars in 1314 had the value of a sword striking the water. Thus Jacques de Molay was a patsy, and had no more knowledge of the subject than his henchman. The commandery of the Templars in Bezou did not separate from Zion till after 1319, but those who served were no longer aware of its mission, much less of the 13 deposits. The sole overseers were the members of the Holpul, Fleury, and Voisin families of beekeepers and viticulturists, the keepers of the Virgin's wheat and the King's vineyard.
Generations of dragons have guarded this treasure down from the days of the fourth dosages up to the little parish priests, through the Riffets to the Cathars of Montsegur and Templars of Languedoc. Shall we one day have you among the dragons?